Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm very excited about this video because we're going to be talking about blushes, which is one of my very favorite makeup categories. And I especially love blush when the weather starts to turn a little bit cold. So I am sharing with you guys 6 of my top go-to fall and winter blushes. These are all my favorite colors, my favorite formulas, and there's something about each one of these that I think is especially great for the fall and the winter time. So we are going to get into it. Before we do, special welcome to any of you that are new here. Glad to have you here. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you do, I hope that you'll consider subscribing before you leave. Also make sure that notification bell is turned on if you'd like to be notified each time I upload a new video. With all of that said, let's take a look at these blushes. All right, you guys, so I have 6 blushes here to share with you. I picked my 6 very, very favorite ones for the fall and winter time. I'm gonna be showing you guys each of these blushes individually. And as an added bonus, I'm also gonna insert some footage of me trying each of the blushes on so you can kind of see how they look like on my skin tone compared to each other, some of the differences between them, which hopefully will be helpful for you. Maybe if you're in the market for a new blush, or even better, maybe you own some of these and you have just forgotten about them. So let's start with the first one. This is one of my very favorite ones. This probably will come as no surprise to you guys. I talk a lot about this blush. I've had it for about a year now, and I think it's one of the best blushes in my collection. I am talking about the ColourPop Cheek Dew in the shade Hot Fuss. I now have 5 of these blushes, and this one by far and away is my favorite of the bunch. Some of the other ones I've had some issues with separation in the product inside the packaging. Kind of separates inside the tube, which bothers me a little bit, makes it a little bit more tricky to use. I've never had that problem with this one though, and what I love the very most about this one is the color and formula. I do think this is a blush you could wear all year long. It is very, very apple red, but it goes on very sheer. Be warned, it is very liquidy. I've had a couple of mishaps with the packaging of this one. When I open it up, if there's like an air bubble underneath it, it'll just kind of squirt out the top. So just be careful when you open this one up. So here is that's a very large swatch of it on the back of my hand. Hopefully you can see what I'm talking about when I say apple red. Now this might intimidate some of you. It definitely intimidated me the first time I swatched it, but as I mentioned, it is a very sheer product. It will even initially go on very bold like this, as you will see in the application clip that I have to share with you guys, but as you continue to blend it, it starts to sheer out and really melt into your skin. It looks so beautifully natural. I love the bold but natural color that it gives your cheeks. It really is one of those blushes that makes you look like you just came in from a run in the snow. It's very Snow White-esque, if you know what I mean. It just gives you that very rosy blushed cheek, which I think is especially pretty in the wintertime. Now, one thing I do like to do with this one, if I do go in a little heavy-handed, and this happens quite often with this blush because it is very bold, as you can see right here, but I'll sometimes just take my little sponge, as I showed you in the video, and just kind of go around the edges of it, and it really helps to make it melt into my skin, maybe take off any excess pigment that I applied if I applied a little too much. But it's just such an easy blush to work with, despite it looking somewhat intimidating. If I go in with a heavy hand, it does not take long or much work at all to get things to blend out, and it always looks so healthy and dewy on my skin. It is quite dewy, but I find that initial tacky or dewiness to dissipate as it sinks into my skin. It doesn't bother me at all. I can't feel it on my cheeks at all, but it still gives you that healthy, slightly luminous look that I love so much on the cheeks. I think it's so pretty. I have tried using this blush with my finger, with a brush, and with a sponge. My favorite way to do it is with a brush. I think it's a little bit easier to control, especially because it's such a bold pigmented blush. But again, just have a sponge on hand if you go in a little too heavy-handed, and it's really easy to scale things back and get things to look nice and natural. The next blush I have to share with you guys, this one might surprise you because I haven't featured this one on my channel very much since I first tried it out nearly a year ago, and in that first video I actually was not sure that I liked it, but I've learned to work with it, and now I think it's a really great one, especially for the fall and winter. I am talking about the Thrive Cosmetics blush stick. I have the shade Tessa. This is the darkest shade that they offer in these blush sticks. They have a couple lighter ones. I think some of their lighter ones do have shimmer in them. This one does not. It's very, very bold and berry toned, so I would imagine this would probably be even better for those of you that have medium to deep skin tones, but it is one I can get to work for me, and there's just something so beautiful about this color when you sheer it out on your cheeks. It gives you, once again, that look like you've just come in from the cold, which I think is so, so pretty. Such a pretty undertone to this one. It's not quite as red based. It does have a little bit more pink, whereas this one is a little bit more warm, has more of a true red base to it. This one does sheer out to more of a berry tone, but I love that as well. I love my berry tones in the fall and the winter, on the eyes, on the cheeks, on the lips, pretty much everywhere. Scarf, sweater, fingernails, I could go on. But I've really come to love this one. This is another one that I like applying best with a brush. I think it's the best way to apply a blush that is a little too pigmented for you. And by the way, the blush that I've especially been loving lately is this one from the Alter Ego set. It's the number 4 brush. I just love this one because it's such a good size for a cream or liquid blush. I like something a little smaller so I can kind of control where where the color is laid down. I think a larger blush brush, things can kind of get a little bit too wide sometimes, and I like to kind of start in a small area and build outward as I go. But this one is great. It's nice and soft. It's relatively loose. You could really use any sort of stippling brush as well that's not too large. I think those work great. But this blush, again, I think applies best with a brush on the back of my hand. So I'll just swipe the product onto the back of my hand. I'll work the brush into the product, and sometimes I'll kind of dab some of the excess off on the back of my hand just so I don't go in too heavy-handed. Then I'll start to stipple it onto my cheeks. I can always dip back into the back of my hand, work a little bit more product in, and then continue building up the color. I love it. It's so, so pretty. Such a pretty flushed looking blush, which I think is so beautiful in the fall and winter. And also, one thing I forgot to mention, as far as longevity, this is one of the longest wearing ones that I think I'm mentioning today. I have another one that's quite long wearing. We'll get to that one at the end. The ColourPop Cheek Dew, that one is probably moderately long wearing. I have very dry skin, so not a lot of things wear off me very heavily unless I may be taking a nap or doing something very active, which is not that common in the day for me. So most blushes will last for a good solid 8 hours. But if you are looking for something more long wearing, this one does last a little bit longer, partly because the formula is not quite as dewy. It has more of a satin finish, or even dry down. It's not quite as dewy as some of the other ones, and I think it does help it to last a little bit longer. Moving on to a blush that I would say is a favorite of mine all year long, but the reason I'm putting it in this selection of fall and winter time blushes is because of its more neutral color. I'm talking about the ColourPop Super Shock blush in the shade Between the Sheets. This was a recommendation from you guys, which I will be forever grateful for because this is such a great blush. I've had it for about a year now. I have a good solid dent in it. You can tell that I use this thing, and I truly do. This is one that I often pull out, but what I love so much about this one is it's such a good neutral leaning cool tone, which I think works perfectly for any look in the fall or the winter time. I do like to do a lot of rich smoky eyes in the fall or the winter, or I like to do bold lips, and anytime I'm doing either of those two things, I don't want a blush that's too overpowering. I want something a little bit more subdued, a little bit more neutral or natural looking, and the shade of this blush is perfect for that. Let me just give it a little swatch for you guys before I show you the try on or the close-up of it. There it is right there. Such a beautiful, beautiful color. I would say this one is probably best for those with light medium to fair skin. Maybe medium skin tones could get away with this one. It's not going to show up very much, but sometimes that's the idea. Now, I do have a lot of powder dupes for the color of this blush. I'm thinking of things along the lines of like Max Melba. That I think is pretty close in color to this one right here, but what I love about this one is it does have that subtle cream formula. It's not dewy, but it does give you a little bit of moisture if you have dry skin, especially in the fall and winter, which is a huge problem for me. I have dry skin all year long, but once the weather turns cold, my skin goes into overdrive. My skin gets drier when the weather turns cold, and it happens like that. It takes 2 days of the weather being cold for my skin just to feel extremely dry. So anything that can give me a little bit of added moisture is very welcome, and this is the perfect formula for that. It's very satiny and finished, but it feels hydrating on your skin. As far as wear time with this one, I'd say it's a good 8-hour wear time. I don't think it's long wearing, but I don't think it's something that's going to come off very easily. That might be different for you if you do have more normal to oily skin, but the main reason I'm shouting this one out today is for its color and its slightly more hydrating formula. All right, next up, we have a newer blush to me. This is a blush that I loved the moment that I tried it, and I have been loving it ever since. And I've been trying out a lot of blushes lately, guys, a couple new ones, and I'm having a hard time pulling for the new ones and putting this one down. I am talking about the Tower 28 Cream Blush. I have the shade Magic Hour. This is another shade. I kind of feel similar to this one as I do about the ColourPop one. It's just such a good neutral blush that goes with anything, but this one does lean just a little bit warm. Normally in the fall and winter, I don't like to reach for blushes that are too peachy in tone. I just like my berry or rosy or cool tones in the winter and fall, but this one does lean a little bit warm without being too peach. It's actually a really interesting color. It's unlike any other color I have in my collection, which I don't even quite know how to describe it, but it's like a warmer cool tone blush. I mean, I know that makes no sense at all, but there's just something special about this color that works with anything that I pair it with. This is again a blush that I like to reach for when I'm doing something a little bit more bold on my lips or on my eyes, when I need something more neutral or natural looking, but this one is quite dewy. So this one is going to give you quite a bit of dewiness and tackiness to your skin, but once you blend it in, it's not going to leave that tacky feeling. So whereas the ColourPop one has more of a true satin or skin-like finish, this one does give you a little bit of added hydration, a little bit of glow, a little bit of dew. It's just just such a fantastic color and formula. There's something kind of brightening about this color. I don't know how to explain it, you guys. All I know is I love this. Every time I use it, I just think there's something special about this. Maybe that's why it's called Magic Hour. Maybe there's something magic in here that makes it just work really well for me, and I can't quite pinpoint what it is, but it is a beautiful blush. I have you guys to thank for this one. I actually never had much interest in this Tower 28 brand until I started hearing you guys talk about it, and I'm so glad that I gave this one a chance because it's now one of my very favorite blushes in my collection. But it is so good. It blends in easily. I love applying this one with my finger. I forgot to mention I also love applying the ColourPop between the sheets with my finger as well. Sometimes with this one I'll apply it initially with my finger, but then I'll take a brush to kind of stipple the pigment and distribute it on my cheeks. I do think if you have a lot to cover, maybe you're worried about your foundation underneath rubbing off as you kind of use your finger to work it in, I do think a brush helps a little bit with that. I find that if I use a brush to blend out my blush, I can be a little bit more light-handed and be a little bit more careful about not disturbing the coverage of my foundation or concealer underneath. So there's a little tip there for those of you, maybe if you shied away from using liquids and creams for that reason. I find that can help quite a bit. Big fan of this one. I know I'm going to continue using this all winter long. I think it's amazing. Okay, let's move on to one of my very favorite liquid blushes of all time. It is from Juicy Pink. It's the Juicy Pink Water Blusher in the shade VL03. Oh, this blush, you guys, is so good. You guys know how much I love these. I talk about them all the time. I've been raving about them for going on 2 years now, and for good reason. I think they're such a unique blush formula, and this color specifically is such a great color for the fall and the winter. If you like your cool tones, which I do, especially in the fall and winter, and when I'm doing a cooler toned eye, I love using a very cool toned blush. This is one of my favorite cool tone blushes. It's such a beautiful, soft lavender that has a touch of pink in it. It is so stunning. The formula of these give you so much hydration. I wouldn't call them glowy or dewy or tacky. They just give you a lot of hydration. They're very watery, as the name implies, but somehow they just leave your cheeks feeling very hydrated and looking very hydrated without looking tacky or dewy. They end up feeling like you just applied extra moisturizer to your cheeks. They're just so comfortable. They work really well for me. They blend really easily. I like applying these ones with a brush. I'll just kind of work the product onto the back of my hand, then work it into the brush, and then just go directly onto my cheeks, and in a matter of seconds it's all blended. It looks and feels amazing, gives you the most soft, natural amount of color. I would say of anything I'm mentioning today, these are the most friendly to those that have very dry skin. They feel so good on my dry skin. I absolutely love them. I love the colors they come in general, but this color for the fall and winter is so beautifully cool toned, and it's very unique to my collection. I don't have a lot of blushes that have this level of cool tone but look so subtle on my cheeks. I absolutely love it. It's so stunning. Last blush to talk about. This is the one that I am wearing on my cheeks today. This has been a long time favorite of mine. I love this one because it is dewy, it is cream, but it also is very long wearing. I am talking about the Kosas Color and Light Cream Highlight and Blush. This one is in the shade 8th Muse. I'm specifically talking about the blush today. This is such a gorgeous blush. It does lean cool tone, but it has a nice, strong, but natural pink hue to it that I think is absolutely stunning. It looks so bold, but it goes on so beautifully. This is a really unique formula. Every time I pull this out, if I haven't used it for a while, it's very almost dry or hardened on the top, but once you work your warm finger into the product, it just starts to melt, kind of like butter, but not greasy like butter. There's something really unique about this formula, and I think that's why this one lasts so long. There must be something inside here that sets down, and this is one of those blushes that I have noticed at the end of a long day, this will still be very visible on my cheeks. It's one of my longest wearing blushes that I own, especially considering that this is not a powder formula. It is a cream product, but it somehow sets down, which I think is kind of magical. If you're someone that has dry skin but is looking for something that's going to last a long time, this is probably going to be one of your best bets. I love the shade of it. This is another one of those shades that I think goes with anything. It's very neutral, and if you go in with a light hand, it can work perfectly for a barely there kind of blush, but you can definitely build it up to get some more bold or bright color if you want to do more of a blush focused look. This is one of the few blushes though that I find works very best with a finger. I have tried blending it out with my brush or with a sponge, but I think there's something about the warmth of your finger that is needed in this product. It just helps it to blend and move around a little bit better. I think I've had this blush for about 2.5 years now. I've got some really good use out of it. It's one that I pull for often, especially when I want something that's going to last all day long. Stunning blush. This has been a long time favorite of mine, and the fact that it's still one that I get excited to reach for after trying so many over the years, I think really says something. Alright you guys, and that is it. Those are my top 6 products recommendations for fall or winter blushes. These are the ones that I know I'm going to be using a ton over the next 3 or 4 months. They're my favorite formulas, my favorite colors that I think are going to go with any makeup look that I will be creating over the next several months. Now that said, I'm sure I'll be trying other blushes out as well, but these are the ones I'm going to keep front and center. They will definitely go into my winter shop my stash. But now that you have seen them, let me know if there's one of these that you would like to see me pull into an upcoming video. I would be happy to do that. But that is it for today's video. Let me know down below, what are your favorite fall or winter blushes? I would love to hear. I'm always in the market to try a new blush. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Let me remind you one more time, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe before you leave, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye. So I hope you guys, so that, which hopefully will be helpful, is because, oh my gosh.